We'll start tonight in Mark 12:30. Mark 12:30. I would be remiss not to say some personal words at the beginning of this night and at the end of this meeting. I don't know that I've enjoyed a meeting quite this much in a long time. I told someone that it just feels like home here to me. I don't know. You just make a connection with God's people. Being with Jerry and Denise and Paul again has been a treat for me. We go way back, don't we? Way back. You have made me feel so welcome. The food's been delicious. Fellowship's been sweet. Worship has been memorable. And you've been very kind in your words, compliments of our work together. There was a scribe who came to Jesus and asked him a question. What is the first commandment of the law? And Jesus didn't hem and haul about it. He didn't say, well, all God's commands are important, although they are. He didn't say, I couldn't narrow it down to one. He just immediately said, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. Of course, he was quoting from Deuteronomy 6:4, the Old Testament law, the Shema that the Jews recited daily. They wrote it on their phylacteries. They put it above their doorposts. This was a famous scripture, but famous for a reason, because it is the basis of our relationship with God. Love is the reason that we serve. It's the motivation for us coming together tonight and Sunday, and for us going out and serving Him and doing whatever good we can do in the world. It's all because He first loved us. 1 John 4, really the whole chapter, but verse 8, God is love. We just try to imitate God. Now, we've been talking about motivation this week, zeal, enthusiasm, moving the needle of our zeal for God. You could substitute the word zeal or passion in Mark 12:30 and it would mean the same. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God. You know, if our zeal for God is lagging, our love for God is lagging. If our zeal for God is strong, that means that our love for God is strong. Those things ebb and flow together, because love is passion, passion is zeal. So really what we're talking about is measuring our love for God at a given moment in time, which is this week, which is tonight. Now let's analyze this verse together. It's one of the great verses of the New Testament, so you could spend a long time looking at this, but let me just give you some ideas for you to meditate on as you go about your day tomorrow. Let's think about the different ways to analyze it. You could just ask the common questions, the analysis questions. Who, what, how, why. Who? Love God. What? Love God. How? With all the heart, soul, mind, and strength. Why? Because it's the first commandment. Or you could look at it from a human standpoint. Did you know that that verse encompasses all of a person? Love God with all your heart. That's emotionally. Love God with all your soul. That's spiritually. Love God with your mind. That's intellectually. And love God with your strength. That's physically. That's all of us. He wants us to love Him completely with everything that we have. Or you could look at it this way. This love is expressed in different ways. Thou shalt love the Lord with all thy heart. That is expressed literally in the countenance, the facial expressions. So when I think of God, when I talk about God, it should show up in the look in my eye. It should show up in the smile on my face, because I'm devoted to God. He makes me happy. He's why I live. You know, a young man, young woman meet each other and they enter into a relationship and they intend to be married. And you can mention his name to her and her face just lights up. Or vice versa. Well, that's what this word means. It means when I think of God, my heart lights up and my face reflects it. But the second word here, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul. That is love, that is expressed in worship. The primary New Testament word for worship is used 61 times in the New Testament, proskuneo. It literally means to kiss the hand toward. Now, that's not a posture of worship that God wants us to have. It expresses the feeling of the heart. It's like I'm showing God my adoration for Him when I love Him with all my soul. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind. That's loving God with our reason. It's expressed in words. We express those words in three different ways. One is in song. Often we don't write those songs, but we love to sing them. We mean them. We just didn't have the talent to put those words together in a song. We also express them in our prayers. So we think of new ways to praise God. You know, we get on our knees, either literally or figuratively bow before God for our prayer. When we go into our closet, when we are in our most private moments with nobody but us and God, and we say, God, I love you so much. Why? We think of new reasons all the time. Take the person out of it because the person doesn't matter. But I was walking today and I saw, this time of year all the trees are dead, but there was one tree that was flowered in purple on a hillside. And I thought, that is so beautiful. And I thank God for the beauty of that tree. That's a small thing. I'm just saying we ought to be thinking about God all the time. And the little things matter. If your small child comes to you and says, thank you, Daddy, and then name something that, didn't cost you anything, but didn't it make you feel good to hear thank you? It's expressed in words. The other way that it is expressed is in what we're doing now. We talk about God, just in conversation, and how much He's blessed us, and how He's answered our prayers, and how our lives would be incomplete without God. And then, with all the strength, that love is expressed in activity. What we do for God, it shows that we love Him. Well, we could stay longer there, and I'd like to, but I'm going to move on because we got some questions to ask and answer tonight. Let's ask and answer these questions because this is really where the rubber meets the road as my car heads back to Memphis. I'm going to leave this with you as some practical ways to implement what we've talked about, because I hope by this time we've all decided, you already decided this before I got here, but we've all been reminded I need my zeal to be strong for God. I want my needle over in the red. I'm really on fire for God. I don't want to slip down into the lukewarm. I want to be what God wants me to be. So we're all on the same page about that, but how do you implement it? I was thinking today, I'm a visual person, so I was thinking how to illustrate this. If you had a bucket of water and the preacher stuck his hand in there and he got it really stirred up, like we've done this week, right? And then the preacher takes his hand out of the bucket, what happens? Well, in a little while, it just goes back to the way it used to be. So you come in, you have a gospel meeting, the preacher stirs things up, and then he leaves, and what happens? Does it go back to the way it was? Or you take that same bucket of water, you pour it in the river, in the mountain stream. Well, it started, but it never stops until it reaches the ocean, does it? I've stood at the Continental Divide. Some of you have, I'm sure. Drop of rain hits right there, ends up in the Atlantic. 6 inches over this way, ends up in the Pacific. Water table, it goes back, comes back down, starts it all over. So what about this congregation? We take the words, the truths that we've inculcated thought about, meditated on, marked in our Bibles, took notes about? Is it going to be like the bucket? Or is it going to be like the river? That it's going to take on a life of its own in my life. Now, it seems to me a mistake of preachers is this, and I tell the young men this every week. There are 3 parts to preaching: explanation, illustration, application. Most preachers are good at explaining. They can tell you what the Bible says. Some are really good at illustrating it. But that application is where we take it home with us. So these verses we've talked about, how do I use them? How does it change me? I mean, I know I could quote them and know them in my head, but I'm talking about internalize them and let them become a part of who I am, my words, my thoughts, my actions. That's what this lesson's about. So these questions. Number 1, I got to say one more thing. Where's this church going to be in 10 years? It's time to ask that question. It's time for every church to ask that question. You can look back 10 years ago. I have no idea. I haven't asked anybody about this. But you look back 10 years and then you come to here and then you extrapolate out 10 more years. Is that an ascent or a decline? I don't know. I know this. The people in this room will determine the next 10 years. If not us, who? Somebody else somewhere else is not going to do it. It's going to be us, right? Church is not something that we come to and leave. It's who we are. It's what we do. We don't go up to the church and have worship, and then we go home from worship. Well, we go to where the church worships, and we worship, and we go home, and that's not worship, but it's still service. All right, so the average Church of Christ is 58 years old. It has 80 members, and it's fewer than it was before COVID. I have no idea what it is here. There are 1,636 churches of Christ that are over 100 years old. And there are 87 that closed their doors the last year that I've read records about. Only about 64% of church plants last past 4 years. 2 churches in the same town preach the same gospel, teach the same plan of salvation, worship with the same 5 scriptural acts. One grows and one dies. Why is that? I'm going to oversimplify this, but it's in our hands. Not the preacher's hands, not the elder's hands, it's our hands. All of us. We're vested in the success of the church. You might disagree with what I'm saying, but it's right. And I mean it with every fiber of my being. It hurts me when a church closes its doors, when they put a for sale sign. Somebody's bled, sweated, cried for that. The time to do something about that is earlier than we think. Here are the 4 questions. Number 1, how involved am I willing to get? How involved This is not a preacher question, elder. This is a member question. How involved am I willing to get? Now, I can make excuses. Well, I'm not as young as I used to be. I work long hours. How involved am I willing to get? There are 7 levels of involvement in the church. Maybe 8 before I get through talking about them, but there are at least 7. I'll just click them off. I got to go fast. AM attendance only is first level. AM attendance only. I didn't notice, but I suppose there were some people who were here at one service in this gospel meeting, the Sunday morning service. They didn't come for the Bible class. They didn't come back for the night, just one service. I used to be really critical of that group, and I've changed my tune a little bit. I'm glad they come. They still have a connection to the church. And I don't know from where they've come or what they're dealing with or how they're going to grow in the future. And but by the grace of God, I went where they are, I might have difficulty being what I think I need to be now. So, I'm not castigating them, but that's the lowest level. And we need to jump up a level if that's us. Number 2, all the services of the church. Come in every time the door's open, find my pew, greet everybody, sing, pray, study, go home. Every service of church. 3rd level is that plus social activities. You have an ice cream supper? Yeah, I'll go to that. The young people going to Branson or Six Flags or wherever, we'll go there. The seniors are going to get apples over in Georgia. That's something we always did, you know. Social activities. That's good. 4th level is all that. Everyone is all that plus. All that plus work activities. If the church is going to have a work day, well, I'll show up with my gloves and my hoe and my hammer. You know, I'll be what needs cleaning. I'll do it. Count me in. Work activities. Next level is all that plus teach or lead. Teach a Bible class or serve as an elder, deacon, preacher. Teach or lead. That takes more time. That takes more effort. Next one is all that plus organized evangelism, which means if we have a door knocking, somebody else has got it, announced it, planning it. Okay, well, what time we show up? We're going. I'll go out with you. Or maybe it's visiting. One of the elders says, "Could you make a visit with?" Yeah, I'll go. What time? Come by and pick me. I'll go. Organized evangelism. The last and the highest level is all that plus unorganized evangelism. Nobody tells me or plans it. It's just who I am. I just invite people to come. I just say, would you like to have a Bible study with people? Now, I'm going to shift over into evangelism. I guess these would be subpoints of that, but there's a separate list. What we have done is made evangelism too hard. It's for the elite. It's for somebody that's been to school. If they know the Bible, because they've been to Memphis School of Preaching or some other school. It wasn't the way it was in the New Testament. It was just members going out with the Word. Acts 8:4. In fact, the preacher stayed home in Acts 8, and the members went out. So, we are doing evangelism, we just don't know it. Or we just hadn't thought of it like that. But we need to. We need to fish in a bigger pond, and we need to hunt as a pack. Fishing in a bigger pond means everybody, no matter what their background, they're welcome here. And we want them as members here. And they have a soul made in the image of God. Doesn't matter if they're rich or poor. Doesn't matter what their nationality is, their race is, their educational level, their personality. It doesn't matter. God wants them in heaven, so we want them. Now, here are the levels. Now, just that list that I just made that you don't remember because it was too long, it went past 4, right? I meant to say this before I said all that. Just find your level on there and go up one. That's all you need to do. You know, you say, well, that was me about there in the middle, or there's me right there at the end. Just go up one. And then get comfortable there and go up another level. Same thing with this. I'm about to give you a list of 10. Just find your level and go up one. And these are so easy. Everybody in here can do the first 8. And then the last 2, you get Jerry to help you. You know? Or a lot of other people. You'll be surprised, because I'll ask and let you raise your hand. You'll be surprised when I get to number 9. How many people will do it? Number 1. 10 levels of evangelism. Number 1 is greeter level. Greeter. You say, that's not anything. Let me ask you a question. You ever been somewhere like on vacation and went in and nobody talked to you? I almost said the place. We went to a large city out west on Wednesday night on vacation. We got there just before it started, walked in. They had a greeter. I went up and shook his hand. Got in, sat down, kids with me. The guy did a great job teaching Bible class. It was scriptural. He was a good, well-prepared teacher. Pretty big church. I don't know. It's probably 100, 125 there, something like that. So they had a break between when he finished his class and the Devo, at the end. So we sat there. Nobody. We were people all around us. Nobody even, I thought we were invisible. When it was over, I went up and shook hands with somebody. But if I hadn't, I don't think anybody would have even spoken to us. They didn't know I was a preacher, I mean, I was not going to quit the church and not go Sunday because nobody spoke to me. But what if I had been a visitor from down the road, church, they made me feel so bad. I'm never going back there. Okay, that's negative. That's not my point. My point is be a greeter. That's positive. You be the friendliest church anybody's ever visited. And you're on a good start already, I can tell you that. You don't have a grumpy member here. Most churches have a grumpy member, but I hadn't met yours if you got him or her. So that's good. So be a greeter. Number 2, I can't talk this much. Number 2, the prayer level. I don't mean just pray generally that the world will be saved or that the gospel will reach lost people. This is what I mean by the prayer level. Have a list of people that let's say 10, that you pray for every day. That they will obey the gospel. They will open their hearts. Some of them will be able to reach them with the gospel. And people will once you have the list, people will tell you names to put on it. You won't have trouble getting your 10 names. And what's so much fun is to pray for those for a week, a month, 6, sometimes years, and then to get to mark one off because you were there when he or she was baptized. You put somebody else on the list. Pray. There's power in prayer. Pray. Anybody can do that. I mean, you can be shut in. There could be somebody watching this. I don't know where the camera is, but people tell me they've been watching this. So I guess we're online somehow right now. People that couldn't be here tonight because they're bedfast or they're shut in, they can pray. And they might do more from their bed than a person who doesn't pray will do all day long when they go where they want. Number 3, give money. I don't mean Sunday morning when you put your contribution in. Everybody does that as part of worship. I'm talking about when the missionary comes in and makes a report and you shake his head on the way out, that handshake has a $100 bill or a $1,000 check in it. Nobody knows except you, and he slides it in his pocket. He knows. Or you get him over to the side and you say, I got your address from the paper you handed out. I'm gonna send you a little bit every month. You might not be able to travel out of the country. You might not be able to teach the gospel where he goes. But you got some discretionary money. And he can't do it without that. Money level. Anybody can do that. even if it's just a little bit. Number 4. This is the reporting level. How do you do it? Let's say you're a member of the church, but your mom isn't. I'm talking to the ladies here, because most men don't talk to their moms, not like this I'm about to describe. But you call your mom every week and you talk, right? If your mom's still living, you probably do. And you talk about everything, what the kids are doing and what's on sale this week and where we're going for days, all that kind of stuff. But during that, you report about the church to her. If she's not, I'm talking about non-member, not a member of the church. And you say, those ladies at the church, I just love them so much. You know what Sister Donna did this week? And you just report. There's no Bible teaching. There's no, you need to be baptized. There's no, why don't you come go to church services with me? Well, all that you want, and eventually, hopefully it'll get there, but that's not what this is about. This is about opening up conversation about the church and letting her know who's important in your life. It's your birthday, and Sister So-and-so knitted you what do you call those things you put in your lap? A napkin, yeah. And you say, Mom, I'm sending you a picture of this. Would you look at this? This lady at church gave me this. And your mom's like, I love that church. They're good to my daughter, right? Reporting. You go to work, and you're in the break room. Man, it's been a tough morning. You're over there drinking a cup of coffee, and the guy walks in. And you say, our congregation is, we're getting involved in this children's home. You know anything about that children's, we give, or this food bank? Well, you're not asking him to give anything. You're just saying, but it's something positive about the church. Next one is this. Sharing. Anybody got a Facebook account? Don't answer that. Right? Up at the top of all social media, and it's got those 3 little circles that are connected with 2 lines. You know that symbol? The share symbol. Yeah. So you're listening to this gospel meeting or Sunday sermon. You say, wow, I want to click the share button and send it to your mom, your sister, your friend, your whoever. All your friends. Say this. Well, you just did evangelism with 1 click. Sharing. What about those tracts out there? They don't do anybody any good in a rack in a church building. We used to have a program. This is when I was a young, dumb preacher. This is what we called it. RATSAT program. Yeah, that was not a good name. But what it stood for, RATSAT. Read a tract, share a tract. So what this young preacher would do, and I didn't even write tracts back then, I'd go to the tract rack and get a big stack of it. We only had like 50 members or something, so it wasn't a lot. So I give one to everybody. So read this tract this week, and don't bring it back. Give it to somebody. You say, I read this, and it's got some good stuff in it. I think you might like to read this. Sharing. You will never know if they read it or not. There's no, you're looking at somebody and you say, well, what do you think about that Bible verse? Well, that's a little bit more pressure, but when you give them it back and you walk off and they throw it away or they put it in their coat pocket and they read it, they don't, you never know. But you shared something. Next one is connecting. Connecting is the more people that someone knows in this congregation, the more likely they are to come visit it. If you're the only one they know, that's not good. So you want to connect them to other people. How do you do that? Let's say you were going to return a skill saw you borrowed from your friend at work because yours broke when you were making your deck. So you've had it out in your garage a couple of weeks. You said, I better get that back. He's going to be missing it. I think I stole it. So you call up one of the elders and say, what you doing? Nothing much. You got time to make a visit? Yeah. Well, come on, get me and we'll go. So you go by and get another member of the church. You go by to your buddy's house. Maybe you make a visit to a widow on the way over there, so what I'm about to say is true. And you get there, and there's your buddy. You say, he's out working, and he comes up there, and you say, I got your skill saw. I'm sorry, I forgot to bring it back. He said, okay, well, just set it there in the shop. He said, by the way, I want you to meet somebody. And so he gets out of the truck, comes over and shakes hands, said, before long they're talking about people that they have in common and where they've worked and football, And now he knows two people in the church. Connecting. The next level is, I got to go faster. Facilitator. Do you feel comfortable studying the Bible with someone sitting down at a kitchen table and you're leading the study? Somebody says, ugh. You don't have to do that. All you got to do is set up the study with your friend and say, our preacher does Bible studies and everybody loves him and he's so good. I'm going to ask him to come over and have a personal Bible study with my family. Would you like to come? Yeah, I've been wanting to know more about the Bible. You just facilitated a Bible study. How many is that?
That was
7.
My needle says 7.
I got to get that up a little bit more. Well, let me just give you these last ones. All right, the next logically would be the one teaching the study. Now, there are some really good studies out there that all you do is just go down the list of scriptures. But let me ask you this. If somebody had somebody that they wanted to study the Bible, you needed someone to study the Bible with them and their friend, this is where you get to participate if you want to. All right. Who would be comfortable helping them with that Bible study? Would you raise your hand? Look at that. Look at that. You got enough people all over this room that are ready to teach a Bible study. Jerry Jenkins preached for the Roebuck Parkway Church in Birmingham, Alabama for 34 years, I think. That church averaged baptizing one person for a week for 34 years. They grew to over 600 members. We went and talked to him in an early part in the pulpit. Well, you might have been there. I don't know. But we went over to Roebuck Park. We sat in their fellowship hall, and I'll never forget he said this. What he said. First he said this. If you don't remember anything else I said tonight, you might want to remember this. Now remember, he preaches for a 600-member church at that time. I don't know what it was. That was at 29 years when we were there. He said, I'm an introvert. And I'm not really comfortable talking to people about Jesus. Well, that sort of struck me because, how's a preacher? But I understand it. That's another story. But then he said this, and this is the part to remember. He said, I'll do things for Jesus I won't do for anybody else. That was in about 1999, and I still remember it. I'll do things for Jesus I won't do for anybody else. But that's not what I wanted you to, that's not why I brought that up. Same day he said that, he said this. He said, if you have 5 people in your church that will have a Bible study one night a week, your church will grow by 1 member per week. I just saw more than 5 hands go up. All right. I'm going to come right back to this, but I'll go ahead and give you the next one. The next one is, well, the next 2. Keeper. It doesn't do any good to bring somebody in that door, baptize them behind that curtain, and then they go out that door and they don't come back, right? So we need somebody to keep them. Be friends with them. Continue to teach them. Assist them. And number 10 is be a missionary. Go on a mission trip. Short-term missions, long-term missions. All right. Now let me give you this real quick. This is for the 5 people in the congregation. If you say, I'm all in, I want to do second mile. It's not for everybody. But if you want to be one of those, I'll give you the frequencies. What are the frequencies of our time? Day, week, month, quarter, year. So five frequencies. So let's start with a year and work backward. Once a year, go on a mission trip. Pay for it yourself if you can afford it. If you don't, ask the elders and they'll help you. If not, this church can't afford it, then ask some other congregations and they'll send you on a mission trip. It happens every summer all over the brotherhood. Go on a mission trip if you're able. Number 2, what about on the monthly level? No, the quarterly level. Well, I really need to reverse it because it's not going to make sense. Okay, sorry. I'm going to go back to the daily like that. Start with daily. Daily pray and daily invite. 2 things to do every day. Pray for your list of people that you want to become Christians. Pray. And invite. If a church wants to grow, this is the dumbed down version. This is the simplified version. This is the, I don't care about all the details, just tell me the bare minimum. Okay, here it is. If that's you, here it is. You want the church to grow? Do 2 things every week. Bring somebody to sit with you on your pew every Sunday. And you make the worship as devout and inspiring as you can. You do those 2 things and the church will grow. How did we start this meeting? We talked about extravagant worship. People come into the services, visit with us, and people seem like they're asleep or bored or disinterested. Now, not here. I'm not saying, there hasn't been I haven't seen any of that. I'm not accusing you. But I'm saying that there are places where you go and they don't really listen. And maybe the teenagers are sort of passing notes and talking back in the back, and the guy's on his phone over there, you know. Well, it's no wonder they don't want to come back. If it doesn't mean anything to us, why would it mean anything to them? So that's what we got to do. 1, there's not anybody in here that can invite somebody to come sit with you on your pew Sunday. Your daughter, your son, your grandchild, your neighbor, your friend from work, there's somebody you meet at Walmart. I mean, there's a lot of people out there. You can bring somebody, sit on your pew with you. Okay, so pray and invite. That's daily. Weekly, have a Bible study once a week. Now, some people have them every night, but just say Tuesday night is my Bible study. I'm giving Jesus Tuesday night. And pray that He gives you somebody to study with every Tuesday night. You might be amazed at how that calendar will fill up. And I've got preacher friends and elders that get up in front of the church and say, I don't have anybody to study with this week. If anybody's got a friend you're talking to, please see me after the service. And almost always somebody's up there talking to them. Say, well, I got a friend. Bible study once a week. Baptism once a month. That's the right frequency, because if you study with someone once a week, the Bible studies usually have 3 or 4 parts. So once a month, you don't convert everyone you study with. No, but a lot of times you study with 2 people at a time, like a husband and wife. And both of them obey the gospel, so it averages out to be 1 a month, 12 a year. You got 5 people doing that in the church, baptizing 1 a month. I'm not good at math, but there's going to be some pews filling up, right? Even if it's half that. Quarter, have a fellowship meal at your house for all the new converts. Invite them over. Now, and then do the annual mission trip. That's the frequency. Second mile evangelism. Well, who couldn't do that? I mean, most people could. You say, I'm all in. I'm okay. Now, second question. And I'm not going to take long on this one. What am I willing to risk? What am I willing to risk to see this church grow? What am I willing to risk to see someone I love saved? What am I willing to risk? May I ask you 3 questions? Am I willing to risk rejection? Well, if I ask them, they may say no. I'll feel bad. Am I willing to risk it? Well, if I knock on the door, they may run me off. Am I willing to risk it? What was it that Esther said? Mordecai came and said, you're going to have to save the Jews. And who knows whether thou art come the kingdom at such a time as this. We mentioned that verse this week. But I didn't mention the other one. When she decided to do it, she said, if I perish, I perish. I may not live through this, but I'm going to do it. Secondly, am I willing to risk my reputation? Well, if I start talking about Jesus up where I work, I'm going to get a reputation of being a fanatic, and they're going to not invite me out to go. Am I willing to risk my reputation? 2 Corinthians 4:13 through 18 is an interesting passage where it talks about the apostles and their reputation. They risk it. Number 3, are willing to risk a relationship. Somebody says, well, if I try to convert my husband, then he may get, or if I try to convert my friend, well, they may not want to be my friend anymore. Am I willing to risk a relationship? Third question, this is the third point, third major question. What am I willing to sacrifice? If I knew that by my giving up something the church would grow, would I do it? If I knew that by my sacrificing something important to me, another person would hear on the judgment day, enter in to the joys of thy Lord, would I do it? You say, what are you talking about, preacher? Am I willing to sacrifice my comfort? Get out of my easy chair, turn off my television, get in my car and drive over to have a Bible study. Am I willing to give up my comfort? Am I willing to give up my time? Say, well, I'm busy and I got a lot of work to do and if we get over in a Bible study, that may go on for 4 weeks or 5 weeks, it may stretch out. Am I willing to give my time? I'm not being overly dramatic here, but I'm just going to ask it this way. Jesus left heaven and came down here, where he had the singing of the angels in his ears, sitting on the throne. And he came down here and let people spit on him and nail him to a tree. Yeah, I'll give it up. I'll put my body on the altar. It's Romans 12:1 and 2. Last question. This last major point. How much am I willing to care? Does it matter to me when the church is going down? Does it matter to me when I keep attending funerals of people that I know weren't right with God? Does it matter to me when people that used to be in the pews are at home? Does it matter to me? I've prayed about this. For the words to say this. There are 4 levels of love. The first level is concern. And of all places, it was demonstrated in hell. Let's think about this when I was walking today. You know that rich man and Lazarus, Luke 16, 19, 31? So the rich man went to the lake of fire, and he's there saying, I need some water. And Abraham said, Lazarus can't come. So he said, well, send him back to my brothers. I don't want them to come down here. He became evangelistic in hell. He was concerned about his brothers. That's the first level. That's Luke 16, 27. Second level is tears. When's the last time you cried? And why? Well, for some of the ladies in here, it's probably been doing this singing this week, or the sermons, or some verse. Some of us men, it's probably when our dad died, or something. I remember, I never met Gus Nichols, gospel preacher in Alabama, but I heard people talk about him. And one of the stories, he was riding in a car. He was doing a meeting somewhere, and he's riding in a car, and they took him to show him the nice part of town, big houses. And he was showing him, that's probably $1 million house there, went around. And then Brother Nichols was quiet for a while. And the preacher looked over there, and he was crying. Tears just running down his face. And he said, Brother Nichols, what's wrong? He said, we're never going to be able to reach these people with all this money with the gospel. Paul cried. Philippians 3:18, Acts 20, 27. Just read the whole chapter. It's in there somewhere. 27 to 32, that section. Jesus cried, Luke 19:41. Jeremiah cried. Jeremiah 9:1. Third level is sweat. That's Mark 2:4. This guy was paralyzed. He couldn't walk. So he was on his bed. And then 4 of his buddies got the bed and carried it down the street because Jesus was in town. And they got to where Jesus was preaching. As Jesus was so popular, the house was filled. They couldn't even get in the window, the door, anywhere. There were too many people. And so one of them had the idea, what if we were up on the roof? So somehow they got their friend up on the roof. I guess they're sweating by now, And then there's no door up here. So they start breaking the roof apart. And meanwhile, Jesus is down there preaching, And I guess the dust is coming down, and then the light's coming in, and he looks up, and there's a blanket or a bed, something coming down. Hi, who are you? It took 4 people to bring that man to Jesus, but they brought him. They sweated. They didn't give up easy. And the fourth level is Romans 9:3. And I've never gotten to this level. I'll just confess that. Paul said, he's talking about his own kinsmen according to the flesh, the Jews. He said, I wish I could be accursed from Christ if it would save my brethren. Now, if I'm understanding that right, Paul is saying, I would go to hell if somehow that would save them. I've never been there. There's nobody I'd go to hell over. But you know, if somebody loves somebody that much, you're not going to stop them. That's the ultimate level. Well, that's the sermon. Now's the invitation. In order to become a Christian, one needs to be baptized in water for the forgiveness of sins. The last thing Jesus said before he went back to heaven was, he that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. He that believeth not shall be damned. Mark 16:16. No one's been baptized yet this week, but tonight might be the night. And it may be that seeds are planted even now, they're growing. And someone in this room or someone out of this room who sees and watches and thinks and studies and decides to become a follower of Jesus Christ. I wonder if there may be a response tonight. What a joyful thing it would be. Or if there's one who's not faithful or desires the prayers of the church, wants to say, I want to make my calling and election sure, I'm coming home. Well, God welcomes us home. And the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. James 5:16. I'm going to close with this. I enjoy creative people. And I read biographies of people. I read Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs. It changed the world. When Apple was just starting, he went to New York to recruit a CEO for his company that was nothing yet. The same was John Scully. He was the president of PepsiCo. And Jobs rented an apartment up there, and he would go like 3 months. And he'd take him out to eat, and he recruited him. But Scully didn't really want to leave his good job to go to this fledgling company, even though Jobs was a good salesman and he had some good ideas. But Jobs finally got him when he asked him this. He said, John, do you want to keep selling sugar water, or do you want to come with me and change the world? He left Pepsi. It was a rocky relationship, but they changed the world. I guess Jesus is asking us tonight, you want to continue same old, the way it's always been? Or do I want to change the world? If you're subject to the invitation tonight, you may come while we stand, while we sing.